Our intention with this episode and all episodes of the Conscious Economics podcast is to expand our consciousness with these conversations, but they aren't always comfortable. Please prepare for sensitive subject matter, particularly related to systemic oppression, racism, abuse, and sexual assault in this upcoming episode. Viewer discretion is recommended. We honor your unique journey and encourage you to take a pause when needed. I want to remind all of us that we are in this together and that we don't have to climb a mountain on our own, that sometimes it's coming in and together with communities that are aligned and taking little steps as a collective group that can lead to the shifts that we want to see. This is the Conscious Economics Podcast, and I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind. This is the place where we explore people, planet, profit, and art through the lens of the new economy. If you're interested in changing yourself, getting more creative, or changing the system at large, then this is the podcast for you. Tune in every other week as we explore these topics with amazing guests. We'll go deep, we'll go heart-centered and soul-felt as we go into how we change ourselves and change the world. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Conscious Economics Podcast. I'm your host, Rhiannon Rosalind, and today you are stuck with just me because we are doing a solo episode. I am here to talk to you all today about a really interesting issue and project that Conscious Economics has been leading, and that is our Heartwork project. So I know some of you are already engaged in this project, and those of you that have been longtime listeners know that part of building a conscious economy is ensuring that we have equity within our labor force and that we're seeing real representation when it comes to leadership and management and boards. And so Heartwork is a project that really looks to tackle that. It's been 3 years in the making in terms of how we've laid this project out. And the goal of the project was always around advancing diverse women into leadership roles and positions within corporate Canada. Now, here's the catch. The reality is most women that we're talking to are actually choosing to opt out of leadership positions within corporate Canada. And that's where Heartwork really sits in trying to understand why that is happening, what are the real issues that women are facing within the corporate labor force, and why are they opting out of staying within corporate labor force or pursuing more senior leadership roles. And that's the truth. So one of the things when I think about this topic and this issue, I get really, I'm not going to lie, bored almost about hearing people go on and on about like, let's see more women on boards and let's see more diversity on boards. And the issue is not about a lack of great people within these organizations. It's the fact that the way that the organizations are set up right now is not always conducive to having women and other diverse folks wanting to step into those senior ranking roles because of a whole bunch of issues that I am going to uncover in this episode. So this is what we're talking about today. It is so important. The reason why we're bringing it up is because we are deep in this project right now. Like I said, it's a 3-year project. We're just wrapping up year 2, and I'm going to break down to you how we've approached it, and then I'm going to share with you some of the research, and then we're going to talk about some of the interesting ideas for solutions that have come forward. So let me first bring you back into how we've created this project. So back during the pandemic, we were talking a lot about the She Session. And for those of you that don't know what the She Session is, what I'm referring to is during this pandemic that we've just been through, we went through global economic recession, and that recession for the first time in history impacted women more than it did men. And the reason for that is sort of a multifold reason. So first and foremost, women still are the ones that bear the brunt of responsibility when it comes to children and child rearing. And we know that our kids were at home during the pandemic. So online school, digital learning, this was falling on the shoulders of many women who were trying to manage their children while also trying to manage their careers. And for a lot of them, they just could not manage that. So many women decided to step back. Many women left their jobs and their positions. The other factor was that many of the hardest hit sectors during the pandemic happen to be sectors where women are dominant. So, hospitality, sports and culture, arts and recreation, education. And so this was another reason why this pandemic was hitting women so hard and why it became named the She Session. So this She Session and all of the other sort of factors of the pandemic, but also just issues around equity and inclusion, they're all sort of coming to a head right now. And what we're seeing is a great exodus where so many folks are leaving the labor force, and a lot of those happen to be women. And the labor force that they're leaving isn't just the overall labor market, they're leaving the corporate labor force. Why? Because people are starting to feel like the way that they want to live and work isn't aligning with the way that many traditional organizations are structured. And I don't want to generalize because this is impacting everybody in some way. It's not just women, but in particular for this project, we are looking through the lens of women. And so I want to just make that disclaimer right now that, you may be listening to this and you may not identify as a woman, and you may still be experiencing some of these things. And so I want to hold space for that. I also want to hold space for those of you that may identify in a non-binary fashion, or you may identify in some other way than using the term women or woman. And I don't want anybody to feel excluded from this conversation, but with the limitations that we had around approaching this, we were speaking to specifically those that were identifying as women within a particular category. So that is the disclaimer, so you understand that really we're talking to everybody, because the issues that are impacting those of us that identify as women are impacting all of us in some way. We need to see more inclusion, more well-being, more freedom, more flexibility within our places and spaces of work. So beyond that, what I want to do is explain how conscious economics approached this particular project. What were we after and what was our intention? And then let's talk about what we found out. So the way that we approached this project was really different, I think. Given everything that I just said about the pandemic and the She Session, we knew that the traditional approach to this topic of wanting to see more women in leadership and wanting to see more women on boards was, quite frankly, not going to cut it. There was something deeper going on, is what we felt. That was our hypothesis, that we felt that there was some emotional and social aspects that were impacting women and their interest in pursuing senior leadership positions. And we wanted to see firsthand if what we were thinking was actually true. And so originally what happened is there was a call that went out through the Ministry of Women and Gender Equity, and it was a call for proposals for organizations that were looking to tackle this particular topic around seeing more diverse women represented in leadership and on boards. And we put together a very specific proposal. And our proposal wanted to do three things. One, capture the real story, the real voice of women who were within the corporate labor force, who were identifying these diverse intersections, and really find out what was going on with them. The next piece we wanted to bring corporate Canada to the table to actually review and see what the reality and the truth was. And then from that lens, start to try to co-create solutions. And number three, we wanted to put a framework together in the end of this project that would really highlight those solutions and give organizations across the country an opportunity to implement them. So really leading to systemic change. And again, when we're trying to tackle big issues like this, we have to understand that just like building a business, this is an iterative process. So there's not a one size fits all approach to a solution. Each organization is going to have their own challenges and barriers to implementation. And even as we practice and put some of these ideas into policy within corporate organizations, we're going to learn stuff and then we're going to have to change it. And that is really how we've designed this project. So the first thing we had to do is we had to go out and we had to really speak to women that were living, breathing, experiencing these issues within corporate sectors across the country. So in order to do that successfully, we wanted to bring some community partners to the table so that we could ensure that there was a safe container for intersectional voices and experiences to be heard. So we partnered with a couple, and I'm going to name them. Really proud to be working with them on this. So, One People TO was one of the community organizations that we partnered with. We partnered with C Center for Young Black Professionals. We partnered with the Canadian Arab Institute. We had a section of UN Women involved early on in the project with us as well. And we had the Indigenomics Institute with us. And along the line, we started to include a few other amplification partners, including Grant Creativity Inc. We had Hackworks involved with us as well, which was beautiful. And then we also had the On Canada project team sort of amplifying what we were doing. And so what we did is we started out by creating deep listening circles. And so those were small containers. And when I say containers, you're like, were you in a container? Were you in a margarine tub? No, but just small gatherings of women. And those women had to be working within the corporate labor force, didn't have to be industry specific. So we were speaking to women that were in energy sector, financial sector, health, just had to be corporate, but they were occupying all different industries within that. And they were of a particular age bracket. So we were speaking specifically to women that were 24 to 42. And why? Because that is where we are seeing the drop off. That's where the research shows that labor pool is the labor pool that would become the senior leadership. So that's who, goes on to become in the C-suite or goes up to be on boards eventually. But that's the actual pool that's dropping out, that's deciding not to work within the corporate labor force or to stay working, but to not pursue more senior positions. And so we wanted to talk to them to understand what was really going on. So when we went out, we opened up each session with some mindfulness, some, deep breathing. We allowed for anonymity. So the women could be anonymous, meaning we weren't releasing names or names of organizations or anything. So again, a safe container for women to really talk about their experiences. Because we had the community organizations on board, we were able to bring some women out that may not traditionally participate in these kinds of activities or research. So really able to sort of deepen our reach into these different communities and really speak to diverse women. And we went across the country. So we spoke to women in Toronto, we spoke to women in Montreal, we spoke to women in Vancouver and in Edmonton and in Halifax. And then we did an all-call national. And of course, this was during the pandemic. So we were doing this digitally, but ensuring that we were speaking to women in various places across the country from various industries. And so what happened? What happened when we were in those safe containers? What did we learn? What did we hear? Well, I'm going to share that with you in just a second. But before I get into, the findings of what came forward, I have to say and speak from my experience in being a part of this. My heart was really impacted by what I heard. Most sessions, I did not leave without tears in my eyes. There was a real community feeling in coming together and hearing each other's stories and starting to recognize the similarities in the stories, despite the fact that we were in different places within the country, despite the fact that we may occupy different intersections of race and identity within this category. There was a lot of familiar and sameness in some of what we were sharing. And that was both powerful and hard. And I think you can imagine why, because, we've been talking about these issues for a long time, or it feels like a really long time that we've been talking about equity and inclusion. And what has really come forward is a lot of people are feeling a bit disillusioned by all of that because they don't feel that the real authentic changes are happening fast enough. And that is difficult. That's tough. And so what I'll do is I'll share with you the top 10 themes that came through the conversations. And what's really interesting is that some of these themes came up 100% of the time, meaning that we spoke to women in these various different intersections and industries, yet they were all saying the same thing. So that's really, really powerful. So the first theme was around toxic workplace. So essentially, the reason why they're leaving, or one of the reasons why they're not pursuing senior leadership roles, is around this toxic workplace or a toxic system. And there was various ways that that was described in terms of what that looked like. And so I'll leave that there for you to kind of think about. The next was just a deep need for corporate systemic change. So this was really relating to the overall system, the design, the way we promote, the way that we advance, the way we pay, the way that we design, the way we work, all of these things not serving women and not serving diverse women very well. The next one was around disparity in advancement of pay due to sexism or nepotism. So, really, women finding out that their male counterparts are earning more than them, even though they're doing the same job, and feeling really disheartened by that. And then just eventually either losing confidence, not pursuing senior roles as they come up, or wanting to leave altogether because they're not feeling valued. And this was coming up over and over again. The next theme that came up was called the heavy invisible load. And this was really something that came up in speaking to women that were identifying as Black or Indigenous or other racialized women that feel as though they sort of have to hold it all. So they have to advocate for diversity. They have to act like these microaggressions that are happening aren't happening. They've got to perform better than everyone to stand out. They're just holding this load on them that they are not allowed to speak about or show, but that is impacting them, that is draining them. And it was very, very apparent that this is a big reason why many diverse women are just not feeling safe or comfortable to pursue senior leadership or even want to be in the corporate framework. The next one was around mental health, burnout, and stigma. This was showing up as addiction, weight gain, hormonal, just being completely stressed out, having your mind and body be fully disconnected because of the hours or the pace of work and all of the other things that we're managing in terms of household and children and, friends and elders and all of it, and just feeling completely burnt and not being able to sustain. And so therefore not thinking that it's even possible to consider more senior roles when we're already feeling so burnt out and exhausted in the roles that we're in. The next was around sexism, so toxic masculinity, sexual harassment, sexual assault. Unfortunately, these things came up quite often throughout the sessions in the deep listening of women sharing stories of inappropriate comments, all the way through to rape. This was, again, I think when we think about these things and we talk about these things, nobody wants to go there. Nobody wants to think that these issues are happening, and yet they are. And I think movements like Me Too have opened the door to these conversations a little bit more, but there is still power dynamics in play and certain things that women just feel that they're not safe to call out or to speak about. So instead, often they leave or they retreat back. And this is an issue if we really want to see more women in leadership. These are things that we're going to have to figure out. The next was around racism, so subtle and overt racism within corporate Canada, also homophobia, transphobia. These were coming up, it's one of the top 7 themes that came up, and it's a big, big issue. And again, it's interesting because over the last decade, all we seem to hear is conversations around equity and inclusion and DE&I strategies, yet these issues remain. And I think what's starting to happen is people are growing very exhausted with how much rhetoric and talk there is about these issues, but how little authentic change is actually being felt on the ground. And so that really came forward in the conversations. The 8th theme that came up was around just general woman to woman toxicity and this generational divide. So feeling like there's more senior women that are in particular roles of leadership, And they had to endure struggles because things were different when they were coming up the ranks. And now it's almost as though they want to impose those feelings or those struggles on the generation that's coming up, almost like I had to do this, so now you do, or this is just the way it is, so get used to it. It's that kind of language. And we have a younger generation of women right now that are more attuned to what they want, what they don't want, what is appropriate, what is not. And so there's this generational divide, and it's coming out in sort of a toxic culture between other women. And it's something that, we have to talk about. The other piece was around work-life imbalance. And I know this isn't a new theme. We've talked about that a lot. We've talked about it on the podcast. This is not just something that's impacting women. It's impacting all genders and identities, but women really express that it just doesn't feel possible to do everything that we're required to do. A lot of women express that they feel like they're almost doing the job of two people, sometimes even three, for the pay of one, with very little supports or direction around how to achieve all of that. And then at the same time, they may be a single parent, or they may be in a household with young children or aging family members, or any number of other life things that come up that make it extremely difficult. So this was another theme, another reason why women are not pursuing more senior roles. And the last theme that came up was this disparity between words and actions. So I alluded to this earlier, this feeling like we're talking a really good talk, but we are not taking the appropriate measures and actions to make systemic change real. And so many women really feeling like, yeah, their senior leadership are saying all of the right things, and maybe they're trying to do the right things, but they're still missing the mark, particularly when it comes to understanding, diverse intersectional needs of specific groups of women. And I think we're in a different era, is the reality. We're at a different time. We're so much more aware, I think, of how broken our economic system really is. And that's the truth. The pandemic brought to the surface things that were always there, but that we weren't perhaps paying as close attention to as we are now. It's like no hiding. The skeletons are out of the closet and we've seen them all. And now what do we do? And so these were the themes that came up. These were the real emotional and social reasons why women were sharing that they are either looking to leave their corporate roles. And like I said, they're not looking to leave the labor force entirely. They're looking to start their own businesses or to work for smaller organizations where they feel like they can have more of a voice. But specifically, what we're doing in this project is we're trying to address corporate Canada. So we're trying to address those large and medium institutions that are the major employers of people in this country. And that's where we want to explore and see some of this change. And it doesn't mean that this change shouldn't be happening on other parts of the economy or within other parts of the economy, but this is specifically what we're looking at right now. The Conscious Economics podcast is brought to you by CPP Investments, manager of the Canada Pension Plan Fund. Canadians can be confident in the fund's sustainability. CPP Investments has earned more than $300 billion in the last 10 years and has more than $500 billion invested around the world. The Canada Pension Plan is set to provide a retirement income foundation for generations to come. To learn more, visit cppinvestments.com. So after we had this deep and profound understanding through this deep listening and needs assessment, we went on and we took that research and we brought some brave corporate organizations that were willing to sit down, look at the truth of what was coming up, and really start to co-create some solutions. And so we held something called our Solution Summit. This happened last year in Toronto, and we had some amazing community organizations that were involved, obviously, some wonderful women who were willing to sit in and participate. and then some great corporate organizations. So I want to shout out our corporate champions, our lead corporate champion, Interact, who's really, really stepped up to the plate on this project. They were the first to sign up and say, we're here. We want to know what the real stuff is, and we want to be a part of solving this issue, not only within our organizations, but across Canada. And I was really moved by the way that they approached this project and how deeply on board and interested they've been, and great, great partners. So Interact coming on board, we had PwC come on board, we had RBC come on board, we had Mackenzie Investments there, we had the Globe and Mail come on board, we had Canadian Tire. So these are major blue chip organizations, Canadian corporations that said, yes, we want to be involved in this. We're willing to step into the arena. We're willing to come face to face with women and community organizations and really look at the issues for real and then create solutions together. And that's exactly what we did. And so we were able to exercise our 1-for-1 ratio. So for every corporate leader that was in the room, there was another community or, young woman that was also given a seat at the table. And we went through the issues sort of one by one, heard from many great speakers, and just really opened it up. We got honest, we got authentic. I think I started off the day by getting up and welcoming everyone and saying I've gone through a divorce. I've gone through all of these things. I am a real human being who's been a leader within the Canadian economy as a woman. And I've also experienced all these other things. And that's the reality because we're human beings. And I think that in the old economy, there was this notion of business as usual. And business as usual was about emotional repression, to be quite honest. It was leave your home life at the door, pretend that none of that matters. When you walk through these doors in this hallway, you are going to put on whatever face that looks like and just do your job. And what we're realizing is that we are complex and intricate emotional beings, and that is not healthy for us. And that better work is done when we feel a sense of safety and community in the places and spaces that we are working. And so this is really part of the philosophy of conscious economics, is starting to invite that more conscious new economy into these more traditional spaces. So yes, we had everyone sit down and start to create solutions. Those solutions are going to be released this spring, which I'm so excited about. We're going to be putting out a really beautiful zine, which you guys are probably going to laugh because if you've been listening to the podcast for a long time, my story was that back in the day when I was in university, I really thought that I was going to be a social advocacy writer for some kind of a zine. And that was my dream for many, many years. And I thought that I was just going to dedicate my life to social activism, really. And then I ended up getting a job at the Economic Club and going a very different route with my career and my life. And, it's full circle for me to be coming back around now, having stepped out of that role, sold the club, started Conscious Economics, and now I'm making the zine, baby. So we're putting out this zine. And the reason why we're doing it in a zine, and so a zine is just an art forward magazine style spread, that we're going to put the research and the data and the framework for the new policies that we've co-created with our corporate champions and our community partners. But we want it to be accessible. We want you to feel like this isn't some boring government white paper that's going to collect dust. We want it to be a living, breathing piece of art. We want it to be a living, breathing framework that people want to read and hold and have on their tables and bring with them in their bag and reference it. And, I think that the way that we approach these things and using new language and just new modes of delivery in terms of how we're talking about these policy issues, that's all part of what we do at Conscious Economics as well. And it's a big part of how we're approaching this topic, because we want people to feel immersed and connected emotionally, spiritually, and logically to what it is that we're doing here. And the other cool thing that we did, which is so, so fun, is through our music platform, Lunar Studios, we invited some emerging Canadian artists, musicians, to sit in on the deep listening research sessions that we did across Canada. And so they got to absorb these stories, these conversations with these amazing women. And then they wrote a song. And that song is now in production. So Serena Ryder, I know we love Serena, and obviously she is an incredible, iconic Canadian singer-songwriter. She is now producer on this track that will be released this spring at the same time as we release the actual zine policy framework. So really using and activating our art pillar to say that art belongs in business, that art and music belong with policy, that art and music are tools to create systemic change. And we are putting our money where our mouth is, and we're investing in that aspect of this program. And so we are super proud, really excited about how this is all coming together, all the different players and partners that have been involved. It's feeling really exciting. And so from here, where do we go? So once we release the solutions frameworks, this will be 10 solutions based on the themes and the issues that were presented that we will be putting forward publicly. And then next year, what we'll do is the corporate champions will start to implement some of those solutions within their own organizations, providing us feedback as to how that's going. And we will also be trying to onboard other organizations across the country to take the Heartwork pledge and start to implement solutions as well. And then we will monitor that, gain more feedback, more insight, and continue to iterate the program with the goal of systemic change so that we can create real opportunity for women to feel safe, valued, appreciated, and want to pursue senior leadership within corporate Canada. So it's really an exciting project. It's an exciting time. We wanted to, speak to this and put all of this out right now because we believe it matters. And as we kind of cap off on International Women's Month at CE, we've taken a really big role this month in trying to gather folks around this important conversation, whether it be from the lens of women, whether it be from the masculine lens in terms of, inviting more men and other identities into this conversation. Because like I said, when we are rewriting our systems and creating change around equity and inclusion, that's not something that should be pushing somebody else out. It should be about us all working together in unity. And that's really a theme of our work at CE is nobody is excluded and nobody has to lose. I think that was something that really came forward in the Heartwork documentary that we filmed as part of the project. So the community leaders I mentioned did a small short film with us really talking about these issues. And that was one of the things that Agapi Gasessa, who is the executive director of C Center for Young Black Professionals, said in the doc. She was like, we get this idea that in order for somebody else to be recognized, someone has to lose. And that's just not true. So she was like, I don't care if it's, a white man or whatever, whoever we decide we're ragging on here, that's not the approach we're taking. And it shouldn't be. It's like, how do we actually all come together and how can we equalize and see more of our population reflected in the leadership of our organizations and everyone being reflected. So not saying that other people have to lose in order for some to win. And I think that that is something that's really important and something that we want to bring attention to. So that is that. That's the project. That's what we've been up to on that side. If you're interested in getting involved, there's a couple of different ways that you can do that. One, we have a beautiful sweater that we've designed. It has our art pillar symbol, which is the beautiful heart with the awakened eye on it. It was silk screened here in Toronto, supporting local economy, local business. It's beautiful. And when you purchase that sweater, you are supporting the movement and helping us as a not-for-profit do this work. So that's first and foremost. If you go to consciouseconomics.ca, there's a Heartwork tab where you can find that sweater, and you can also sign up to find out about different activations and events that we're doing in this space. We need the support, we need the encouragement, we need the love. This is big work that we're doing. You can also follow along on social media. So whether that's following Conscious Economics, very active on Instagram, or following Lunar Studios, which is the music platform side, these are all different ways that you can get involved and find out when the next Heartwork activation is happening. So that is a cool thing. And I guess I'll end off in just saying that I'm going to take a little breath here for a minute. It's hard time right now. The economy is feeling a bit like a roller coaster with the inflation, with seeing more banks kind of fold and fail. And I know some of us are scarred from, 2008 and the global financial crash that happened then. And we're feeling weary. We're feeling tired. We've come through a mass collective trauma of the pandemic. And it's just feeling like a heavy sort of a time. And some of these issues feel too big to tackle, or at least too big to tackle on our own. And so I want to remind all of us that we are in this together and that we don't have to climb a mountain on our own, that sometimes it's coming in and together with communities that are aligned and taking little steps as a collective group that can lead to the shifts that we want to see. And that's what we're really trying to do at Conscious Economics, is invite those that are already doing this work, those that are on the frequency and the vibration of this change, to come together, to co-create, to work towards building solutions, and in a way that everybody is included. So just the fact that we've had the corporate organizations on board really helps to break out that tendency for sometimes, folks to speak in echo chambers and only speak to the converted and only speak to people that already understand and are living and breathing the issue. And sometimes we need to speak to the folks that don't understand. Sometimes we need to invite those that aren't living and breathing the issue in the same way, or might not see it in the same way, to the table, and not to purely educate them, but also to be educated by what they see as the barriers to putting some of these solutions into play, and just to have open and honest, transparent dialogue. I think that's one of the most important things that we need to do. And so that's it for me here. That's a wrap on Heartwork on this particular episode. Thank you so much for all the love and support that you continue to give us here with the podcast. We're so proud of season 3. It's been a great run so far. We've got some great episodes still coming up for you. I'm sure you can hear in my voice, because I feel like I'm losing my voice. I'm doing the work. We're doing the work here. We're pushing it forward. We're really trying to occupy a new space and to keep our hearts open, to be innovative, to create solutions, to not be afraid. And I know that so many of you that are supporting the movement, or just even liking, sharing the podcast, this stuff matters to us. It really, really does. So thank you so, so much. And I hope to see you out. I hope to see you at our upcoming events and activations. Send us a message, send me a note if you're feeling some of these issues yourself. And I'd love to hear your stories and how they're showing up for you. So thank you for that. And thank you for tuning in. And we hope to see you again in that new economy 2-week cycle, so we can have our rest and relaxation and really prepare for these episodes. So talk to you soon, and bye for now.